Thank you, Madam President. Members, we all know that a third of the state of California is now enrolled in the Medi-Cal program. Yet we don't have physicians that are willing to take these Medi-Cal fees because we've clawed them back so far, so much over the past decade. Senate Republicans have authored proposals to increase Medi-Cal reimbursements, and unfortunately, those bills just sit and are not even allowed to go forward in a hearing to capitalize on our record-breaking revenues that we have coming into the state of California. Senator Nielsen and I authored a bill in the special session that would have used ongoing new revenues to pay for the developmentally disadvantaged communities and for funding Medi-Cal. Unfortunately, they were not allowed to go to hearing. So what do the proponents of this tax want? They want a tax increase on every person in a managed care plan to pay for services that frankly can be paid with existing revenues. The proponents have tied a tax increase on managed care plans to the funding of the developmentally disabled, which I find frankly offensive. I have a granddaughter that's autistic. She gets wonderful services daily from the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino. When the proponents threaten to cut her funding if I don't vote for a tax increase on managed health care plans, it makes me angry. My friends, the facts are really clear with this issue. My district is made up with many hard-working, middle-class men and women who struggle every day in a state that has the second highest taxes in the entire country to make ends meet, where they have to make choices, important choices, in order to move their families forward. They have to decide whether they're going to pay for a doctor, whether they're going to pay for pharmaceuticals, or whether they're going to pay for food. And I think that's wrong. We can fully fund our developmental services with ongoing revenue. Ongoing revenue that's $1 billion more than was anticipated. All we need is 35% of 1 month's revenue, and we can fund the developmental services that are needed. Why is it that we can't find 40% of a month's revenue and just take the bull by the horns and not saddle yet another tax on our middle class? The health plans have gone to support on this bill. Why? Because they've agreed to certain tax benefits that will hold them harmless to new taxes. Certainly, nonprofit healthcare plans aren't going to achieve the same benefits. But what about the consumers? Will consumers be guaranteed that their rates will not go up? Is there anything written in this bill that will codify the fact there will be no increases to any citizens in the state of California? No. Will consumers be guaranteed that they're going to get better access to health care in the state of California through this bill? No. I think all of us in the room know and realize that if we raise taxes, somebody's got to pay the bill. Somebody's got to pay the freight. And these insurance companies will, in fact, either increase their profits by increasing their rates on hardworking Californians, or they may deny care. But the bottom line is the consumer is going to get hurt with this bill. According to the Center for American Progress, the middle class is essential for the economic growth since so much of their disposable income is spent on goods and services. Do we really want that disposable income that's spent in our state on higher medical costs as a result of this proposal? The health plans have come on board with this proposal by saying they won't raise rates on consumers because of the special carve-outs on obscure tax loopholes. Many of you are going to commit to this tax today without any guarantee that the federal government is going to say this is nothing more than an end run to not doing what the federal government has asked us to do, and that is to tax all healthcare plans across the board fairly and freely so that we can capitalize on this money that the federal government wants us to match. I'm in full support of going after these billions of dollars of federal funds. In fact, a lot of the revenue that we have coming into the state of California is actually from another tax, from Prop 30, that was passed, a temporary tax. We have those resources today to get these federal matches for many years ahead of us. Why did the plans move forward to support this deal? They got the tax breaks. They got pressure to support it, or else more regulations would come down on them. And for those reasons, I don't blame them for stepping up to the plate. We have organizations that historically would oppose these types of taxes that choose for this bill to remain silent. But we know that these companies will recoup their taxes, their losses, via the tax breaks and other ways. Again, higher premiums, denials of coverage, and the like. Let's look at who makes up the people who will pay more under the MCO tax that we're considering today. It's going to affect each and every one of our districts. Despite having the highest revenue in our state's history, the poor and the rich will not feel any pain that we're contemplating here today. Middle-class earnings, according to the Huffington Post, have declined the most in California when compared to 49 other states. We have more bankruptcies, foreclosures, and the Tax Foundation has documented we have the third highest tax burden in the United States, and now we're going to add to that. Are we really willing to raise taxes on hardworking Californians again to pay for something that we can do with our existing revenue streams? In a time when a majority of Americans, 63% of Americans, my friends, don't have $500 in a checking or savings account, and yet you want to tax these same citizens $50, $100, $150 a month more to pay for a Medi-Cal program we can afford to do ourselves. I want to be very clear. We need an increase in Medi-Cal funding. We need to fully fund the developmentally disabled, and we must recognize that we have a multi-billion-dollar budget surplus. We don't need to raise taxes to pay for our most vulnerable, and we don't need to increase premiums on hard-working Californians, the middle class, the working class that struggle every single day to pay for health care, to pay for all the other taxes that they have to pay for in our state. Our gas taxes. When you go to the hardware store, you've got to pay a tax on wood. We all pay the CRV fees. Well, most of us don't go and redeem those fees. Those are just a tax that our haulers get to have the benefit of. The bottom line is that our existing revenues are sufficient. We should also remember that Obamacare promised that we'd be able to keep our doctor and we'd pay less. And we've all seen that that has not been the case. We've witnessed a very clear message in the presidential debates that there is this anti-establishment fervor that is building on both sides of the aisle. If this vote is successful, we will be adding to that fervor. We will be adding to that anger at a time when many people are paying attention to this vote, especially those on my side of the aisle that have expressed confidence in our party moving forward and having balance here in the state legislature in the years to come. So today, my friends, I will not be voting on the MCO tax. I think it's wrong. I think it's a bad deal for Californians, especially working and middle-class families that are working hard to make ends meet. Please join me in voting no on this bad deal for Californians.